Well, the 2025 season started in April, and here we are in late August at Championship Weekend. Welcome to Game Day Live, presented by Pabst Light. Thank you so much for joining us here on the UFA's YouTube channel. We are thrilled to have a panel of experts here to break everything down. We got multiple games coming your way this weekend, and I am spoiled to be joined by the voice of the sport, Evan Lepler, the editor-in-chief of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood, the two-time World Games gold medalist and San Diego Growlers coach, Kayla Helton, and the 2018 UFA champ, Colin Camp. Great to be back here on the panel with you. And ladies and gents, how are you feeling? We're back here at Breeze Stevens Field in Madison, the capital city of Ultimate. I don't want to speak too much for you guys, but the vibes just feel like they're off the charts.
The vibes are immaculate right now. This is ultimate paradise. And I want to advise all of you, around 5 o'clock, this place is going to start to get loud. Make sure every 10, 15 minutes you look at the stands and just kind of see it gradually filling in, because by 6:30, like by the second half of Salt Lake, Boston, it's going to be really, really good. And I think Minnesota, Atlanta tonight could be an all-timer.
Yeah, I'm fired up for these games. I feel like we have 4 really interesting teams that all have a path to a title, and combine that with being in maybe the best sort of like neutral site stadium in the league, and we're gonna have some fireworks.
Yeah, a lot of new teams championship weekend this year. It's been really cool just to see them around, how excited they are. I really feed off that energy. Even right now, I can see them warming up in the background here, and love it.
And beyond the teams competing here, we've also got the WL and PUL All-Star exhibition that you're going to be taking place tomorrow afternoon.
Will you wear the gold medals during the All-Star game?
They are very heavy, let me tell you. I don't need anything slowing me down, but I'm really excited for that game. I've been wanting a PUL-WL cross matchup thing to happen, so it's super cool it's happening here this weekend.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Colin, what's it like being back here at the complex where you once won a title?
Yeah, it's great to be back here. Obviously, all of you have mentioned this. This is a great venue for Ultimate. It's a city that loves Ultimate, right? You know, even though the Radicals aren't part of this championship weekend, I would expect a very raucous crowd. They're going to get behind the teams that bring the energy, that bring the fun, and that bring the attitude all weekend long.
So let's remind you of the matchups that we have this weekend. Our first matchup is going to feature the Salt Lake Shred going up against the Boston Glory. That's the West Division champion against the East Division champion. And, you know, if we want to start by looking at the Boston Glory's kind of trip to get here to championship weekend, we got to go back a couple seasons and think about how they first got their first playoff win last season, a buzzer beater from Jeff Babbitt, the former Empire star, who is now a central focal point here for this Boston Glory squad.
Yeah, I mean, Babbitt and his ability to kind of shape-shift to where they need him to be on the field has long been a kind of a staple of his game, but more so this season than ever. I mean, he's played fully on the D-line. He's played fully on the O-line. I feel like we could see him go either way tonight, depending on what they feel like they're going to get out of him in this matchup. And, you know, I mean, he's just simply been the most dominant player in the league. He's the defending MVP. He's got a really good chance to win another MVP this season. And, you know, his leadership as a player has elevated this franchise completely. I mean, I feel like he's changed the culture almost in Boston, from a team that seemed to not send strong teams on the road to now they take it really seriously. They're here, and they're probably the favorites to win a title this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think it's almost. I think he's changed the culture completely. And it's not just him, but he is the biggest part of the changed culture in Boston. He's such an interesting personality, right? Because you look at him and you just assume he's like gruff and mean and intense. He's really a pretty chill guy in most situations. Obviously, he gets fired up in big moments like catching buzzer beaters at championship weekend or knocking off his old team. But he's really a guy that is really thoughtful and contemplative about his role on his team, what he can bring. I think he is kind of has a superior confidence, Kayla, on the field that, you know, is pretty uncommon in our sport. Like, everybody projects confidence, but to be the guy that knows that they can always get the disc when they want, it's pretty special. And yeah, I think it's appropriate that we're starting the weekend talking about Jeff Babbitt, because as the two-time MVP and as the leader of arguably the favorite arriving here to Madison, he is the man to watch.
And I really like what you said, Charlie, about his ability to kind of shapeshift, because when we think about the playoff performance, we saw something that arguably we hadn't seen before from Jeff Babbitt. You know, earlier in the season, he was starting downfield in the cutting core on their O-line. Middle part of the season, this group was really trusting him to be a defensive anchor and someone who was getting a lot of blocks. And then here in the East Championship game, he goes and completes more passes than he ever has before in a single UFA game, and just becomes this terrorizing presence in the handler space that BC really couldn't just slow down at all.
Well, and this is all while having 0 turnovers the entire season, right?
Crazy.
We have to keep that in mind as well. That is such an impressive thing for somebody that is such an impact player on their team. And for me, getting back to kind of what Evan was saying too, I think his leadership transcends all of this. He talked about this in the press conference earlier today. He is so focused on his leadership, and I think that has been such a key part of this Boston Glory's success this year, and really this development over the last couple years to get to this stage, is Jeff Babbitt coming in there with his leadership style and bringing people up to his level.
And what a luxury, right, for guys like Toba DeCrana to learn from him and train with him every day and get insights from the greats, one of the sport's all-time greats, and be able to incorporate that near the start of your career before you're even fully entering your prime. I'm salivating just thinking about having an opportunity like that.
Well, and I think it's going to be really interesting tonight to see how Salt Lake defends him. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. If Jeff Babbitt is the primary reset handler, does Salt Lake put a top defender like Tony Mounga on Babbitt and not kind of let Tony wreak havoc downfield? I mean, Kayla, how would you prepare to face this Boston team if Jeff Babbitt is primarily in the reset space and not doing damage downfield shy of the red zone?
Yeah, I mean, you're really not going to be able to prevent him from doing things, so it's about how much can you contain what he's doing. So not knowing where he's going to play is a huge question mark for teams playing against him, but to me it also speaks to what a great team player he is, because if he can kind of plug in anywhere, then that's putting his teammates in positions where they can shine. I think that's super cool as a leader on the team. But yeah, it's a huge problem to match up on him. So best of luck to whoever gets to guard him.
And zooming out from Babbitt, let's just talk about the Boston team as a whole for a second. This team came out super hot, an undefeated start through more than halfway mark of the season, and they lost 3 of their last 4. And yes, you know, Babbitt was nursing some injury. There were other guys that weren't fully available, but it seemed like, I don't know, in my opinion, they kind of limped their way into the playoffs. Yes, they had the first seed in the East Division locked up, but then they came into the East Division championship game and just put this absolute thumping down against DC and kind of eliminated a lot of questions, at least in my mind, that I had about this team's ability to coalesce with the most important moments of the season on the line.
Well, unquestionably. I mean, I think a lot of us felt like DC had kind of seized the momentum in the East coming into the playoffs. They had won at Boston, and, you know, sure, you could discount some of those Boston losses, but it felt like there were some question marks about how they were going to perform in the playoffs. But the thing is, you know, DC missing a couple of people, I think, hurt them in that final game against Boston in the East Finals. But I also think that Boston showed that when they put their best roster out there and they showed up with intention, that they're clearly the best team in the East, as they had showed us for most of the season. And I feel like we almost got lulled into this false sense that, oh, maybe they're not actually the best team.
Yeah.
And in reality, they have been all the time. And I think they, you know, for various reasons, just had a couple of bad games, as most teams in this league have at some point this year.
But in every season, too, I think it's good to lose games, right? It shows you that you have areas to improve in. I mean, I know Chicago Union's not part of this conversation this weekend, but you kind of look at them and you wonder, hey, was that undefeated season weighing on them a little bit? Did they rest on some of their laurels because of that success? I think for this Boston team, having some of those losses in the way they were losing to, the offense not looking great, you know, you can come up with excuses or you can get to work. And I think they got to work, and you see that that game there. 17-9 is an absolute shellacking in a championship game.
My biggest question coming into tonight is, can Boston do it again? I mean, if that was truly their A-plus game, can you play your A-plus game 2 games in a row against a team like Salt Lake, who has such a different stylistic presence than the DC Breeze? I mean, you think about DC's small ball offense. There's nothing about Salt Lake that's small ball. You think about the youth and speed and energy and spirit of this Salt Lake team. It's you know, DC's a quality team, Salt Lake's a quality team, but the way the Shred do it is differently. Boston mastered DC, but that doesn't mean they're going to master Salt Lake in this environment.
Yeah, I think Coach Sam Rosenthal acknowledged this morning how different a stylistic challenge this Salt Lake team poses for them. And Kayla, as someone who's kind of, I guess, game planned against them, I know you're now coaching in the South Division and no longer in the West Division. What do you need to keep at the forefront of your mind when you're game planning against the Salt Lake offense?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of energy. They have a lot of confidence in their play. The chemistry they have together is off the charts. It's like the most out of any team in this league, I would say. It's clear they've been playing together for a really long time. You see that manifest across the board on their offense. The defensive energy they bring, like they're hunting for blocks constantly. So if you take any kind of risk or throw to a small window at something that they're trying to create and like a trap that you're throwing to you, and they really build off of that defensive energy.
And I feel like that's something that this team cultivated a lot this year, because in a certain sense, yes, they've built on the success of previous seasons, but they also had to learn a lot after their trip to the West Division Championship game last season and their misfortune in coming up short against Seattle on their home turf, and then having to watch championship weekend unfold at their home stadium and not being able to compete. And we're looking back at some highlights from the 2023 championship weekend where they needed some unbelievable heroics to extend the game. You know, Bryce Merrill joked this morning that they were going to activate Joel Clutton just for this game, but I don't think the Vegas Bighorns were going to allow that coming into this weekend. But this group has had a path, and it's a different group this year because they have that experience. I think so many times we talk about Salt Lake being a young team, and yes, there's still a bunch of young guys on that roster, but now a lot of those key players have been in the league for 4 years. They've seen guys turn over and leave the program, and now they're stepping into bigger roles for the Shred franchise. I'm thinking about a Chad Jorgensen, a Will Selfridge, a McKay Jorgensen, who are doing things that, you know, maybe they weren't necessarily doing at the level they're executing this season.
I would say, you know, Bryce Merrill gets the most out of his teams, and he's been doing this a long time, coaching at the college level, coming into the UFA, and you know, this team has the players to compete. The question is, can they put up enough pressure against this Boston offense? And I think it's interesting because they're very fast, they have a lot of speed on their D-line, and Boston kind of wants to work this methodical pace. And we saw that against DC, where they would just be happy to possess for 3 minutes at a time. It may be a little trickier to do that against Salt Lake because of the speed that they have. And so that's going to be fascinating to watch, because the thing is, when you sort of look at it on paper, it's easy to imagine how Boston maybe changes the game plan here. And they look to Toby DeCrana, they look to Orion Cable, they look to Babbitt, they look to Tanner Johnson-Go to be bigs downfield who there are no matchups for on the Salt Lake roster. So, you know, maybe 1 or 2 guys, but they're not going to be able to cover all of them. So will we see Boston open up the arm? They're not a team that loves to huck, and when they have huck, it hasn't been super successful, but they have the people who can throw, and they have the right matchups in this game. I will be curious to see if they're forced to adjust, if Salt Lake can take away what they want to do as their primary look, and that's going to, we'll probably figure that out early in the first half.
Well, one thing we talked about, I think I talked about it with Brian Jones when Salt Lake played Minnesota. Ian, you might have brought this up as well. The way the Shred attack the Hucks on offense, it's different. They don't try to high point the disc. They try to body out the defender and then kind of read the angle of it. It's a different style of pursuit in the end zone, and that should help them because they are dramatically overmatched from a size department. And I don't know if any of you have a story about, you know, hanging tough against a team that just physically was much larger than you and getting the better of you. But I do think that's significant tonight for Salt Lake. Like, that is going to be something that is one of the reasons why I think Boston will ultimately win this game. Just from a side, I mean, Henry Ing was the biggest player on any team in China, and you knew you had that weapon in the big moments. And Boston has a similar vibe, but they got 5 Henry Ings.
Yeah, I think the difference is they don't want to throw to Henry Ing, right? They
Right.
want to play the possession game. So I think if Salt Lake can kind of force them to choose those bigger options and force them out of their first game plan, that's probably a win. So if they can do that early in the game and see how it works out, I'm curious to see what happens.
Right, that's really the key, is what does the first few minutes of this game look like? If Salt Lake comes out hot, I think that changes the strategy for Boston really quick. I mean, if Boston goes down by a couple early, that's not where they want to be. They want to be up early. They want to slow it down, Big Ten football, and really just run out the clock, right? I mean, that's what their game plan is going to be. That is their key to success. That's what they did against DC. I mean, that's what they're going to be looking to do tonight. And if Salt Lake comes out hot, I think that forces Coach Rosenthal to really adjust quickly, and it might be to open up the game at that point.
And Salt Lake, in its playoff game against Oakland, had to play that comeback-oriented game. As we take a look at some of those highlights here, obviously Tony Monga and everyone were huge down the stretch, but I'm curious how you guys feel. I question Salt Lake's ability to execute some kind of a big comeback against a team that is executing as well as Boston seems like it is right now.
Oh, I thought Salt Lake had lost this game. I mean, Oakland gave this game away. And like, credit to Salt Lake for some super clutch moments. Tony Mwanga, foremost among them, but you see this pressure right there at the back of the end zone. You never see a layout D at the back of the end zone like that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It was unbelievable.
It's just great pressure, good pulling. And so, credit to Salt Lake for getting it done down the stretch, but they're definitely not going to survive a stretch like the third quarter that they had in this game. Boston will be up by 5, and they're not going to give it back as much as Oakland did. They're just not. They're a much better red zone team. Oakland had a horrific number of red zone turnovers in this game, and Boston's one of the best in the league with Babbitt.
And the big thing, the big asterisk that we have to put on that, I feel like if Leo Gordon had been available for that game, that changes how efficient Oakland ended up being in the red zone. But everybody has to deal with injuries and availability as the season unfolds.
Yeah, Salt Lake is without one of their veteran defenders, Nathan Huff, who's in concussion protocol tonight. It's critical for the Shred that they get off to a good start. To your point that Boston's not going to let them back in if it's like a 3-4 goal game. But if Salt Lake can throw the first punch, if they can sneak out an early break, because, I mean, look, there's a chance that this game is 3-1 Boston at the end of the first quarter. And Salt Lake is like, man, we're on the pace to score 4 goals. And, like, that's a realistic possibility. Salt Lake, if they can get off to a good start, get a couple on the board, get a groove for their O-line, and show the Boston D-line that they are faster than DC, and they are more dynamic than DC's offense was on that particular day 2 weeks ago in Boston. I do see a roadmap for the Shred, but they just need to start off this game on the right foot.
And I think we need to see their O-line ready to show up and play against a defense quality that maybe they haven't seen that much out west. And that's going to be a big, I mean, we saw DC, a great offense, look totally pedestrian and unable to even complete passes at times against Boston 2 weeks ago. So how are Chad Jorgensen, Jordan Kerr going to show up? These guys are great players. They've been here before. They know what it's like to play in this kind of environment, but it's still a different question when you've got super, super strong defenders on your hip the whole time. Can you still execute in those moments? If they can get their O-line off the field, they definitely have a chance to win.
Slight counterpoint to that is that I feel like we did see the Salt Lake offense excel against Minnesota at home and against Atlanta.
Well, not in the second quarter against Minnesota.
Not in the second quarter. I'm thinking about the entirety of the game.
Yeah, no,
and in the season opener against Atlanta. And I want to shift our focus there just for a few minutes. I mean, this is a team that has just truly exercised demons, and as Tuba Benson Jaja told you, Evan, brought those demons onto the field with them. You think about their division championship game losses in the last couple of years to Austin, to Carolina, the Atlantic division that was formed in the year after COVID when they came up short in the playoffs against New York. This team has endured a lot and a lot of heartbreak, and hearing this team talk this morning, it seemed like they just feel like they have this huge metaphorical weight off their shoulders now that they've reached championship weekend for the first time.
And we'll see if they play that way, right? It's easy to say that they've got the weight off their shoulders because they're here, but they haven't won a championship yet. You know, they're South Division champs. They still have 2 more games to win. And there's a lot of scar tissue with this Hustle team. We're looking at it right here. Ryan Osgar at the buzzer in 21. And then Matthew Armour catching the game winner in double overtime in 23. And then Ben Snell called game. And the Carolina Flyers went into Atlanta and knocked them off in a wild South Division final last year. I mean, Kayla, I know this is a little bit of a sore subject for you, but as someone that faced this Atlanta team 3 times this year, like, do you feel like they have put the past in the past? Or do you feel like there's some mental weakness that you can still exploit among some of their better players?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We played them 3 times, and I felt like they were beatable, and they beat us all 3 times, so the facts are the facts. But there's clearly this type of, like, always the bridesmaid, never the bride situation going on, and that can either really motivate you or it can get in your head. Based on that conference this morning, to me it felt like they're just really grateful to be here, which is how I would want the team to respond. And they're kind of playing with house money. Like, they're here, they can make a run for the title. I think in past seasons they felt like they deserved to be here, and they did not this season, and I think that's a really healthy way to go in. But they also seem like they thrive on chaos a bit. If you've ever played at their home stadium, there's literal club music playing while the game is happening. So to me, I think they might thrive in this weekend.
Yeah, the only question for me is what happens if they get punched in the mouth right away, right? It's all, like we were saying, it's all fine and dandy to think, hey, we're happy to be here, we're playing with house money, but everybody wants to win a championship. We're all competitors, we've all played at the highest level. We want to win a championship. So what happens when you get punched in the mouth in that moment? And for Minnesota, I think if they get punched in the mouth right away, they're going to respond with that championship mentality. They're here to win. I don't doubt that Atlanta's not here to win, but again, if that last game was your championship game, that first bit of adversity could be really tough for you.
Colin, in a strange way, I feel like they'll be okay if they get punched in the mouth. I feel like they could trip on their own shoelaces, is a metaphor. And whether it's what we saw from Carolina in the championship game last year with some of their best players, Alan Laviolette, Elijah Long, William Coffin, just doinking the disc. Because we've seen that from some of Atlanta's guys. Those are the mental shortcomings that they need to avoid early in this game, because they can handle the adversity if someone else does it to them. But if they do it to themselves, like we've seen them do in the past, that's when I get nervous for Atlanta.
So Atlanta is going to be facing off against the Minnesota Wind Chill, the defending champs that all of us picked going into 2024 championship weekend.
Except Atkins. Atkins didn't take them, but the rest of us all had Minnesota.
Exactly. And this is a program that has gone through a ton of evolution over the last couple of years. You think about those heartbreaking losses in the Central Division Championship for them in 21 and 22. And then in 23, they finally get over the hump and make it to championship weekend. And in 24, they mastered the conditions better than anyone else did. And that was very much a part of the game, in my opinion, not an, asterisk that kind of disqualifies what they accomplished. And when we think about their accomplishments this season, this is a group that lost to Chicago multiple times in the regular season, one time quite handily. And then when the chips were down and the seasons were on the line, that group found a way to grit it out, to frustrate the Chicago offense and get the job done. And so here they are with a chance to defend their title.
Yeah, and for me, that's what I'm locked in on with this Minnesota team this weekend. I feel a lot of confidence from them right now. I think they they stood the course all year. They had moments where it was a bit lethargic. We kind of talked about that in the press conference this morning, but they found moments and found inspiration throughout the year to get back to this point, and they won when it mattered. And to me, that's that championship pedigree, that's that championship mentality that gets you through these 2 games, because there's going to be a lot of highs and lows over the next 2 days, and you need to be able to navigate them.
Of all the coaches and players that we heard from earlier today, I thought Minnesota was kind of the most business-like, most kind of just focused, not distracted by the bright lights. And it makes sense, right? Because they were at championship weekend last year. Salt Lake, Boston, Atlanta were not. Shred played in championship weekend 2 years ago. Different team, young team, a lot of returners too. But this is a Minnesota team that is, I don't think it's going to be distracted by the bright lights of the moment. They felt in a weird way like, and even a guy like Justin Burnett, who's here for the first time, it's kind of crazy how, like, doesn't it feel like he's kind of been on the windshield for a bunch of years? Like, he wasn't on the championship team last year, but the way he has fit in, I mean, he's got 2 blocks in both playoff games. He's brought, like, the right amount of swagger and kind of arrogance to that D-line in the best of ways. And it's going to be really interesting to see him face his old teammates later tonight for the second time this year, because he's got a little bit of a mental edge to him.
Over under 1.5 waving celebrations from Justin Burnett in this game.
I mean, I think way over.
You're taking the over? Yeah. All right, over. Go ahead,
just
Charlie.
say this game was completely insane. I mean, what a crazy game. Chicago had destroyed this Minnesota team throughout the season.
Yeah.
Like, embarrassing losses for Minnesota multiple times. And then in Chicago, just the wildest game of the season, perhaps, with the swings back and forth and some absolute heroics down the stretch. Noah Hansen with a crazy block that we're going to see in just a moment. It's hard to believe Minnesota's back here, because I think most of us sitting up here definitely expected Chicago to be the Central Division representative, and Minnesota continues to defy the odds.
Colin, you're the only one on this stage that has played in this league. When you see this type of play from Noah Hansen, what goes through your mind?
I mean, these are just the types of plays that, for me, the big field is a big reason these things happen, right? There's so much more space. There's guys feel like they have more opportunity to make these big plays, and it shows you the athleticism that's in this league. I mean, that's not the first or the last time we'll see a play like that. I mean, there's countless plays like that, and it just shows that the youth movement that we've seen in this league, in this sport, more and more guys are coming in bigger, stronger, faster than ever before, and it's only going to make the sport more exciting.
To me, Minnesota looks the most confident when they are uncomfortable of all the teams that are here, which is, like, to me, a huge mental toughness plus for them, because you never know what's going to happen at a weekend like this, when pressure is so high, when the games are so tight, when you care so much, and if you can be comfortable in uncomfortable positions, you're really setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, how often do we see clean ultimate at championship weekend outside of maybe like the New York Empire, right? Like, they put on some clinics, but not a lot of teams put on clinics for 2 days in this setting. There's a lot of pressure. You're in an unfamiliar space, and for a lot of guys, it's their first time being there.
And taking it back to the Boston Glory, that's why I think it's going to be hard for them to have single-digit turnovers, because of the championship weekend pressure and the vibes. They're different. They're not at home on a Saturday evening. They are here in Madison at the capital city of Ultimate, and the Salt Lake Shred breathing down their necks.
Well, warm-ups are rolling on. The opening pull is drawing closer. We still got some more pregame analysis, speculation, and picks coming your way. Don't go anywhere. Pregame Live and Game Day Live, presented by Pabst Light, rolling on here on the UFA YouTube channel.
Throw like a pro with a new Pro Ultimate Frisbee. Created with input from the sport's premier passers, the Pro Frisbee is specially designed to fly through the wind and maintain its edge. Experience the official Frisbee of the UFA and get yours at shopufa.com today.
Welcome back to Madison. Just about half an hour away from the opening pull here at 2025 UFA Championship Weekend. Ian Toner joined by Evan Lepler, Charlie Eisenhood, Kayla Helton, and Colin Camp. Our first semifinal is featuring the Salt Lake Shred warming up right in front of us against the East Division champion Boston Glory. And look, Boston's O-line is just kind of littered with top-level talent that could arguably be in a UFA, all-UFA first team in and of itself. We've got talents like Jeff Babbitt, who's also played some D-line, Toba DeCrana, Ben Sadok, and then of course Tanner Johnson-Go has been on that D-line this year and been an unbelievable talent, kind of reaching a new level in the UFA that we hadn't seen from him in years past. I don't know where you guys want to start in kind of dissecting all of the top-level talent that they have.
Well, I mean, you literally could put all 20 names in a hat and pick one out, and you'd have a pretty good guy to talk about. That's the Boston Glory right now. Even if they're young players that aren't household names yet, Benjamin Horaceberger and Oscar Graf, like, these are guys that they feel really confident in getting the job done. I am really curious. I mean, like, I expect Babbitt to play well. I expect Toba to do a few things that take our breath away and probably have one or two mistakes as well. Orion Cable is the enigma that I'm really curious about. He's the biggest guy on the field. He is the Henry Ing, for lack of a better describer, for this Boston team. And in the East Final, he didn't. I think he was 19 for 20. I don't remember the mistake he made. He finished the game with negative 60 throwing yards, and he was their second most prolific hucker during the season. So the guy that caught the disc on an under and took his shots, I'll take that reset. And I'm curious whether he can remain that patient tonight.
The patience is the big question mark. I mean, they've showed the ability to put together long stretches of offense. You know, call it boring if you want, but they work it down the field for 2-3 minutes and then they put it in, and it's just so demoralizing for the defense. And, you know, you tire out the D-line more than you tire out yourselves because you're just hitting the resets over and over again. Yeah, I think DeCrana is a player that I feel like we're almost under talking about because of some of the other names that are on this team. I mean, he has elevated to the point that he's one of the world's best players. He's not just one of the best players in the UFA. Obviously, Rookie of the Year last year, playing with Montreal. And, I mean, he is so skilled. They don't even really ask him to do that much on this team relative to what he's capable of doing, as we've seen with him on Team Belgium at the Under-24 World Championships. I mean, he can go down there and just roof
and on the Royale,
on the other team.
He had to be the primary producer.
Exactly. So that's what's super interesting about this Boston team is that they have these guys, Cable's another one, who can just go and be the superstar A1. And then they have guys like that on their defense, like Tanner, who's just on the D-line, you know, kind of driving the bus over there, but he is somebody who can also be the number one on an offense. That's the luxury that they have. That's why they're the favorites this weekend.
What do you guys think about the depth that Boston has been able to add to its lineup down the stretch? I'm thinking about guys like Peter Borth coming back into the lineup, and Gus Haflin, and Sam Rosenthal being able to put Calvin Stoughton on the D-line more consistently because he's got other guys coming back into the fold. What do you think that does for Boston's strength or not coming into this game?
Well, I know that last year they felt like Peter Borth was their best defender for cutters. Like he was the guy they wanted on Jack Williams or the Empire. He's probably going to be the guy that's on either Chad Jorgensen or Will Selfridge tonight. But like they've got four guys like that. I mean, Calvin Stoughton, Peter Borth, Benjamin Horaceberger, Tyler Chan is a criminally under-discussed guy. I mean, he was playing Universe Point in the national championship, and that was a decade ago, and he's still as fast as he's ever been and as feisty as he's ever been, and I think he's going to be an X factor for Boston tonight too.
Well, yeah, and Coach Rosenthal kind of talked about that too, getting some of those additions late in the year. There's going to be guys left off this roster today that would likely be in the active 20 on all three of these other teams this weekend. And so that just tests, that gets back to what we're talking about with the depth of this Boston team and really the unselfishness of these guys to kind of transition into different roles throughout the year and keep moving around. And we saw the result of it in their last game. It's their best game of the year. But is that just a one-hit wonder, or do they have it in them again tonight is the big question.
Well, Salt Lake is going to have its hands full with those players, but Salt Lake also has some stars of its own. This is a group that did endure a decent amount of turnover when you compare what that team looked like last year in the West Division Championship game. No more Grant Lindsley, no more Ben Field, no more Simon Dastrup. Sean Knoll is on Atlanta, and they still have guys who have been here from the beginning, from 2022, who are really elevating their games. And one of the guys that comes to mind there is Jordan Kerr. Another one is Chad Jorgensen. Two really important pieces of this offense. And I think they're going to have to be perhaps more consistent than they've been this season in terms of reducing their turnovers per game if Salt Lake is really going to push Boston to the brink or come out victorious.
I mean, like we were saying, that DeCrana is kind of not talked about enough for Boston. I feel like we're not talking about Jordan Kerr enough for the Shred right now, right? The talk of this morning was very, very little Jordan Kerr talk. But one thing that Coach Merrill said that really stood out to me was that he wants Jordan Kerr to lead their team in Ds tonight. He anticipates that this offense is going to turn it over, but he's expecting Jordan Kerr to be the guy that steps up, gets the disc back for this team, and gives their offense opportunities in those moments.
That sounds like a Matty Sang comment asking an O-liner to lead the team in blocks. Like, take your shots and then go get it back.
I was going to say how he would frame that is, we're not going to be perfect, but we can be perfect in how we respond to imperfection. And especially as an O-line player who you're going to make mistakes, you're going to turn it. How the team does is very dependent on if you can get that disc back. And it sounds like Merrill has a lot of confidence in his team to do that.
And it's funny because, 2-3 years ago, we had Jordan Kerr in the MVP conversation. And I don't necessarily feel like he's taken a step back as a player. If anything, I think this year he has been more comfortable in his role. And perhaps the Shred have asked him to do a little bit less. And because of that, it has allowed him to excel. And I think there's absolutely a world where Jordan Kerr throws 9 assists tonight and Salt Lake shocks Boston. Like, that is definitely within the realm of possibility. But more likely is Jordan has 2 or 3 turnovers that in big spots that cost him, because he has been a little loose with the disc at times, more so last year than this year, but still a little bit from time to time. And those are just the types of mistakes that Salt Lake can't afford tonight.
Yeah, I do think Kerr is the person you want having your turnovers on that O-line, though. So if the team is giving him those shots and those opportunities, that's probably going to be the most successful for them. Not that you want turnovers.
I was going to say, are you speaking from the Shred perspective or from the Shred opponent perspective?
Yeah, just saying if someone on the O-line is getting the turns, you want it to be a playmaker like Kerr, where he is taking a little more shots rather than one of their less production players.
Well, the good news for the Shred is that Jordan is healthy this year. We know last season he was dealing with a hand injury through the second half of the season. Made it tough for him to get back in rhythm. I think another piece that we haven't mentioned is McKay Jorgensen, and that's a handler that Bryce Merrill singled out as perhaps Salt Lake's most talented player. And when you look at the completion percentage rates over the course of his career, his consistency really does jump off the charts. And I think it's going to be an interesting challenge for him to replicate that level of consistency against this Boston defense that is just ratcheting up the pressure to a new level.
And he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. I mean, he's still super young and figuring out exactly the type of player he will evolve into in his mid-20s. But, yeah, Ian, I'm with you. I mean, earlier today, Bryce Merrill basically said McKay Jorgensen's our best player. And there are a lot of really good players on this team. I mean, Will Selfridge is not a name we've already talked about. He could have a big night. Obviously, Chad Jorgensen. Jacob Miller doesn't usually like to look to put up big stats, despite being the stat guru and analytics guy. But, I mean, he's super steady. But, yeah, McKay is the pivot man. I mean, when I was talking to Sam Rosenthal last night, he said number 10 is the one I'm worried about because he can really hurt you.
And last thing about Salt Lake is just when we think about their defense, we think about their collective hunger and how their strategy makes teams uncomfortable and forces them into tough spots. I'm curious how some of those one-on-one matchups are going to unfold. How much is Will Selfridge going to be responsible for trying to limit the impact of a Toba or the impact of a Jeff? And how much is someone like Tony Moonga going to be able to replicate the performance that he put together in the West Division Final with those multiple key blocks against Oakland down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the coaching comes into all of it, I think, right? Because I got to think that Tony's going to be on Jeff Babbitt to start, but is Boston then going to put Babbitt in the backfield, right? Like, those are the types of, like, cat and mouse games that we're going to see all night, I think, right? We have two very, very good coaches in this game, and it's going to be really exciting to see some of these defensive matchups, because if we start to get that Jeff Babbitt, Tony Moonga matchup downfield, I mean, that's going to be fireworks. That's going to be really good television for all of us.
One thing I'll say, these two teams, while they play a very different style, they have some things in common. Both teams very fundamental with the disc. They're going to look to hit the arounds. I mean, Boston has its own sort of culture around how they develop players, even starting from like the middle school and high school level. And it's kind of this their possession-oriented style that's very different from what Salt Lake does. But Salt Lake, these players work on the simple stuff, the throws, the catches, and they have drilled that and drilled that and drilled that. I will be really curious to see if we end up feeling like we're seeing some similarities at times, even though they're looking to do different things to score points, generally, as sort of their overall offensive structure.
Kayla, can I ask you to put your coaching hat back on? And, if you are Boston trying to game plan for Salt Lake and trying to figure out how to slow down this offense that typically operates at a pretty high clip and has a lot of endurance, what are the ways that you look to apply pressure against that group?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you're trying to separate their handlers from their cutters and have their handler resets being headed into the backfield. If you let them get those upfield resets, or if they can swing very easily across the field and attack from the high side with momentum, you're going to be in a tough spot. So if you can just be disciplined in pursuing into the backfield, kind of let them catch those things headed backwards, and then you're playing, I would say, hard fronting, even though they're going to huck. I would hard front and force them into that tough look early. To me, that will really help slow down the momentum. You can do a couple trickier sets on their handlers, give them different looks so that it's not just an easy read every time. I think that would do a good job to slow them down.
Challenge them to set the tone with the huck and prove that they can huck well early on.
Yeah, I mean, hucking with momentum and tempo is a lot different than hucking with a standstill, with a cutter and a defense setup, ideally.
Sure.
They're also hucking in a stadium where they've never hucked before. And we have a little bit of breeze right now, not as much as I would like because it's really hot in the sun. But we look over there, that flag off to the left is blowing pretty good. So, I mean, Colin, you can speak to the wind tunnels in this venue more than we can, especially in recent years as they've kind of built it out. There's, depending on where you are on the field, which corner of which end zone you're throwing to, the disc will do different things.
Yeah, exactly. If you're throwing towards that northeast kind of side of the field, you're going to start.
Which is the northeast side of the field?
That's going to be, well, people can't see me right now, but on the broadcast, it's likely going to be the top right portion of your screen. If I'm thinking about this correctly, maybe Evan, you'll have to point that out.
The end zone way over there.
Yeah, over there. Yeah, okay. To give you reference.
I didn't have my compass, so
yeah, to give you reference, northeast
this
right over there.
This is a compass right here. This
it should be.
How did you earn this? This is fraudulent.
So as you're throwing,
I have no chain. Everybody's got chains around me.
As you're throwing in that direction, the disc can really do some weird things. It tends to really sail in that corner, and also if you get the disc too elevated, you start to get some of that bouncing effect too that you won't feel at ground level but it's definitely up there in the stadium. And so that is something that teams struggle with when they come here. That's why it's always been an advantage for this Radicals team. And the years where they were playing zone and really shutting people down, it's because there is that weird bouncy wind that you don't always feel on the field. So I agree. I think that is a big factor in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is the Salt Lake Stadium is actually at elevation, and that makes a huge difference, especially in Hucks, where any edge you put on the disc is going to come out a little different here. So I'm curious to see how they adjust.
Less than 15 minutes to game time. I think we might want to be putting everybody on the hot seat and figure out who they're picking. We're going to focus on this first. We're going to focus on the first semifinal, only on Boston versus Salt Lake. For those of you tuning in now, thank you so much. A reminder that we do have another post-game, pre-game show between the two semifinals where we'll make our picks for the Atlanta-Minnesota game. But Evan, let's start with you. Between Boston and Salt Lake, where are you leaning?
Well, for those who heard Swing Pass, they know where I am leaning. And I got a lot of respect for the Salt Lake Shred. I think Bryce Merrill is the coach of the year. I think what he has done with all the young studs on this team, the Sam and Kimball Pugh and Nate DeMorgan and Alex Forsberg stepping up, Will Selfridge coming into his own. 3 former Boston Glory guys on this Salt Lake roster that'll be playing tonight. That matters, and I could see Salt Lake winning the game, but I am still taking Boston. Perhaps I'm going to be fooled because Boston was so good 2 weeks ago when I saw them in the East Final, but that is the last impression I had. Also, the Shred struggling to beat the Spiders, so I will ride with Boston, their talent, their size, their depth, their swag. I got the Glory.
I've thought a lot about this one. I think Salt Lake's got an interesting opportunity because they've played in the championship weekend before. How will that come into play tonight? At the end of the day, though, talent wins games. I got to take Boston. This Glory team is simply too big, too skilled, and just is going to overwhelm this Salt Lake team the same way they did to the DC Breeze. I don't even know that I see this game being all that close. I got Glory big.
Man, I mean, not to jump on the bandwagon here, but I know as a player, I play my best when I know I don't have to do everything. And to me, Boston has the tools that not anyone has to have the game of their life to win this game. They can rely on their teammates and trust their teammates, so I got to go with Glory as well.
Yeah, when I think about the comparison between the West Division Championship game performance and the East Division Championship game performance, Boston's was just so much more convincing and comprehensive and complete. I think I got to pick the Glory as well. Colin, how about you?
Yeah, I feel like this has been a popular pick for the entire panel. I mean, you look at guys on that team. You got the Babbitts, the DeCranas, you got Sadok. You got so much talent everywhere. You'd be crazy to think anybody besides Boston's going to win, which is why I'm taking the Shred.
Dread the Shred, baby!
It's the Lee Corso moment here on Game Day Live. Man, how does that feel? I know you're not supposed to talk when you have a mascot hat on, so maybe just give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. Thumbs up.
He's feeling good about it. All right, well, we just got a few minutes left before opening poll. It's 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern on WatchUFA.tv. This has been Game Day Live, presented by Pabst Light. Thank you so much for joining us. For Evan, Charlie, Kayla, Colin, I am Ian. We can't wait to see you at the opening poll of Championship Weekend. Game 1 of 4 this weekend coming your way in just about 10 minutes.
The game's biggest stars on the game's brightest stage. The world's most competitive annual tournament pits the playmakers and the game changers against one another in a weekend of action.
So many legacies on the line in this game.
Arguably the best player.
And that's just ridiculous.
She's got it!